Welcome back, YouTube, and thanks for clicking in. Today, I am going to show you how I turn these generic Costco shelves into a customized version like this with very few tools and relative ease.
You sure about that?
So sit back and relax as we delve into this frustrating process. Let's get into it. As usual, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to help build the channel. In order to complete this, we will require a few simple items. Naturally, the first thing you will need is a standard garage shelf of choice. They're available in multiple sizes, depths, and dimensions, so choose appropriately. Next, you will require some trim to cover up the corners and the beams. I went with a 3.5 by 0.5 inch modern style trim. As well, I selected a staggered finishing piece for the top just to cover up the gaps. Finally, I picked up some simple quarter round just for the edges and the baseboards. Next to that, you will require some construction adhesive, latex caulks for finishing, and some paint of choice. I went with a high gloss shiny black. Also, you will require some spackling to finish off the rough ends. Both of these options are great choices. And of course, you will require some form of finishing tile of choice. I went with a 4 by 2 foot porcelain slab. The exact variety is the one I've used on all my other shelves and is called Panda. Next, you will want to test fit the tile on the actual assembled shelf. I will forego assembly of this shelf and assume you can do it pretty much yourself. A little side note here, for my needs, I wanted the tile to extend beyond the shelf boundary by about 2 inches to match the other shelves I have, so I cut the rear portion of one of the supports off. No worries here, as it is strictly for cosmetic reasons and will not support any weight at all. This allows the tile to extend beyond and overhang just a little bit. It provides a much more aesthetic look in my opinion. As I require the shelf to extend on the bottom as well, I had to notch out a small portion of it to fit properly around the supports. I could have just chopped the tile to fit perfectly, but wanted to carry the look across to both levels, upper and lower. So here I am outside of the house with the slab, transposing all my measurements via some tape along the sides. So here I am. Luckily, I have a little experience and a wet tile saw in order to accomplish this. Post cut, we can see the little sliver I needed to remove from both sides. I cleaned up the edges afterwards. After that was to measure and cut the trim for all the support beams and ensuring the pieces will completely overlap one another. With all the pieces cut to length, I can begin test fitting and lining everything up. Note, the bandage figure is not related to the shelf, but instead a gym injury. Also, I utilized some trim off cuts to properly position the borders as well as to elevate it off the floor just a little bit. This will be covered eventually by the quarter round afterwards. Here, we have all of the pieces positioned and taped in place, checking and test fitting everything. I just wanted to make sure it all lines up correctly and that I am happy with it positioned as is. Once happy with all the positioning, I can begin gluing. It is at this point I realized I needed help.
I should call for backup. But they won't come. They don't exist.
And here I'll just insert some more B-roll showing the gluing process. I like using the PL Premium Fast Grab. It's very thick, but grabs a hold of the supports very well and with little movement. Typically takes about 12 to 16 hours to fully dry and harden, but it's strong enough to hold it almost instantaneously and will not slide on you. Once the adhesive has dried, I was able to tape off the joints and begin spackling them. This particular variety goes on bubblegum pink and dries completely white. The tape is not necessary, but speeds up the cleaning and smoothing process dramatically afterwards. Here I am simply working my way around the entire unit, using the other brand of spackle as well to see the difference. Both are great, but the white one went on a little smoother. Here we have some of the joints pre-sanding, just drying off all the white spackle there. Once the tape is removed and it is completely hardened and dry, you are free to sand away. Or, as in my case, I utilized a damp rag. This works just as well and eliminates the dust flying everywhere. Here's a quick shot of the joints filled and smoothed out afterwards. The next step is to dry fit and measure out the finishing trim for the upper and lower areas. Here you can see the quarter round I used for the bottom, as well as the staggered piece trim I have for the upper portion. The Here, we have the trim pieces cut and angled to cover the gaps and make for a more complete finished piece. This offers the first glimpse as to how the finished piece will look. By positioning these on the top perimeter of the shelf, it allows for the lighting wires to slide underneath as well and hide them very easily. The next step is to begin painting both the inside as well as the outer perimeter. It will take a few coats for full coverage. In this sequence, I'm just taking a moment to examine it under the heavy light to see if I have full coverage or not. Note the reflective quality of the paint. If you're worried about imperfections, a flat or muted sheen helps to hide them very, very well. Afterwards, we attach the trim to the unit. The trim was pre-painted prior to attaching. It's just a lot easier and safer that way. At this point, we're able to spackle all the areas that require it, filling in all the gaps, smoothing it out afterwards, prepping for sanding. Once dry, we can begin to smooth these over as well. It may require 1 to 2 coats. Once dry, you are able to apply the final coat of paint. This will cover all the imperfections and spackle, as well as add to the sheen of the product. Once the paint was dry, I was able to begin wiring in the miniature spotlights and testing them out. Also, because the trim is resting on the supports as I mentioned earlier, there is a fine gap, perfect for the wires to slide into and be hidden. These particular spotlights were purchased off of Amazon. Very inexpensive, and I love them. I have numerous sets.
Oh my god!
And here we have the completed unit as it sits now. I added an additional 1/4 inch round piece to the face of the tile, just as a little touch, and think it fits in nicely. Painting the inner side of the trim really completes it and adds a very polished look to the final assembled unit. Also, I was able to tie strap and hide all the wires from view and to the rear support. As I pan over, you can see the other units, assembled in the exact same fashion and matching. Also, a small podium I'm working on as well, just waiting on the custom countertop I had made for it to be completed so I can finish it in and put there.
It's magnificent.
Not sure how I'll position this shelf just yet, but I have a current setup with all my little XM Cosmic display, as well as some quick glamour shots of the other display options I have with the other shelves.
Nice.
But I don't want you to be limited to this. Here, I have other shelving units which I made differently. For these, I used a pinboard front as well as some custom 3D printed logos. As for the height, I cut them down even further to my particular desired height. Conversely, I have modified some IKEA Besta style shelves as well. Here, I made a custom illuminated top with a tempered frosted glass shelf. Well, that's a wrap for this one. I hope you enjoyed it and got some insight into some options you can customize for yourself. Until our next adventure, keep your passion for collecting alive and your love for superheroes soaring.